So, everyone, welcome to this week's class where we will be talking about formatting your paper and your presentations. And when it comes to formatting, we're talking about basically how your paper is structured. Everything from general spacing, margins, what font to use, everything like that. So basically, to make sure that your paper looks good to the eye, which makes it seem professional to the reader, which gives you a sense of credibility when for you as a writer. So, moving on, we will be starting with the general guidelines for APA, which is a type of referencing system that we used to talk about last week. And I know you have dabbled some in this as well. But for the general structure, what you're going to need is to use double spacing between your lines. So this means you have to go in to Google Documents where you write your files and try to find the settings where you control spacing. So this is some tech savvy for you guys. And I know you can handle it, but just make sure that this is happening. I also need you guys to have 2.5 centimeter margins on all sides, or meaning to the left and to the right, those two margins. That's the line they should have, and you will use Times New Roman 12 points. That's the font and the font size that you will be using. So make sure that your paper sticks to this, and then we can head on to in-text citations. And what this means is when you have a source or a reference in your text, how do you put it in there? Last week, you saw me using brackets where I put a name and a year and a page number. And now we're just going to briefly go through how you guys can make sure that that looks nice and easy for you. So what we will be using, and don't worry, we're getting to examples afterwards, you will use the so-called author date method, where the author comes first and the year comes afterwards. What you also need to think about is that you always capitalize names and initials when you use this kind of referencing system. And that means that the first letter of the name and any initial, they will have like a big letter, so capitalized. What also follows here is how do you do the referencing when it comes to multiple authors? How do you do it when we're looking at electronic sources and printed sources? And another big thing that we'll be following here on the coming pages is short quotations in contract to long quotations. And a quotation, for those of you who wonder, is when you quote something. That's when you take a part of someone else's text and put it in yours to prove a point. And then you need proper referencing. You need to show where it comes from, and this is important. Really important that you show where you take your facts from, both so you don't plagiarize, so you steal someone else's work, but also to make sure that the people reading your text know, oh, they got this fact from a reliable source. So that makes you seem like a good writer. So now we're moving on to some examples here. And we will start by looking at different types of sources. So I could go on and on and on about how to do this in detail, and there are some people who would say that, oh, I'm just doing this way too short. But this is what I require from you now. So basically, in a text, you will write like this. So, research by Wegner and Petty. So the authors comes first. You introduce the authors. Then in brackets, you have the date, 1994. Supports. And then you write what they supported, what they claimed, what they said, what they stated. Followed by brackets, Wedner and Petty, 1994. That's what you need to write. When it then comes, as you can see in red here, to multiple authors, that's more than two, the first time you introduce them, you use all the names. But following that, you only write the first name and then you write et al. And the year number after that. So it's basically the same principle all the time. That's how it should look. And if you wonder how it can look, go back to my old video, check the examples there, and you see how I used it. And you can check there. And then as you see on the bottom right of your screen here, I have the question about electronic resources. And that is basically referred to in the same way as the others. You need the author and you need the date. Those are the things you're looking at. All right, so we got this. Then we're moving on. And then we're moving on into the example of short quotations. So quotations, basically when you take what someone else has said and you put it into your own text. Now, in the text that you guys are writing, I don't really want that much quotations because then you need to be able to use your own words as well, and that is called paraphrasing. You read what someone else has said, and then you paraphrase it, you write it in your own words, in your own text, but you still reference the other author. Alright, you still need to put the references in. But why do the quotations? Well, that's basically when someone says something so good that you don't want to use your own words. You want to use those exact words that they used. And then it should look like this. So, the first one here. According to Jones, in 1998, students often had difficulty using APA style, especially when it was the first time. And what we can see here, author and date, they introduce the author, then they put the date in bracket, the year, that's the date, and then comes the quotation within quotation marks. Students often had a difficulty using APA style, especially when it was their first time, and then finishes the quotation by putting in the page number where it was taken from, so that anyone who wants to check knows exactly where to go to find it. Alright, but there's one more way that you can do this. If you don't want to introduce the author in a so-called signal sentence, as we did in the beginning here, according to Jones, that would be the signal sentence. You can do as we do here in the bottom example. She stated, followed by the quote. And then in brackets they put Jones in 1998, page 199. And then follows on with their own text. That is another way to do it. And anyone is good. Both work just fine. And variation is nice. So in your text, if you want to be really good, try to vary how you write. Because always writing and reading, then for the reader, of course, according to Jones, according to Jones, according to Jones, or according to this person or that person, that gets kind of repetitive. So shifting things up could be a good thing for you. And this leads us into longer quotations. So that leads us into the examples of the long quotation, which are 40 words or longer. And I strongly advise you not to use longer quotations in your texts, because your texts, even though you might feel like it, they're not that long. And I want you to get as many of your own words in as possible. But if you really feel the urge and the need to use a longer quotation, then this is how it should be done. Let's look at it. You see here that Jones' 1998 study found the following. That comes like directly from your whole text. So that's where your text ends. And then you take a new line, as you would start a new paragraph. You indent that line. And then you start writing the quotation. And the entire quotation should be indented like this. And The reasoning for this is basically so that we can see that this entire long piece of text is a quotation, and that makes it easier for the reader. And this is called a block quotation, basically because it looks like a block in the middle of your text. When you're done with the quotation, you go back to the regular formatting right away, just to keep the text going. And for those who wonder, the text is supposed to be indented 1.25 centimeters when you indent it. I'm not going to sit there with like my ruler and look how far you've done it and everything, but that's the regular idea. All right? So now, always remember, feel free to pause and go back if you do not understand, and bring questions to me in class if you do not understand what the hell I'm talking about. So, moving on. And here comes the APA guidelines for the works cited page. What is a works cited page, you ask? Well, when you have done all your referencing and your in-text citation in your text, you might notice that I can't see the name of the book or the article or the website where you got your information from. And that's why at the end of the paper, there's a list where I can see that. I can check if I need to go into detail. And what you started with is a header in bold text that says references. And all lines after the first line in this list should be indented 1.25 centimeters. The author's names are inverted. That means the last names go first. It should also be alphabetized. There's a tool for that in most writing programs. I also need the full name of the journal or the cited work that you've been using. And for electronic resources, you need to include the URL, the name of the website, like the entire link where you got it from, at the end of the entry. And now you're saying, what the hell did he just say? So, let's move over to an example. And that example looks just like this. So, it will start by saying references. That's a new page. You're done with your entire paper. Then you start a completely new page. You put references in bold on top. And then you start going with your alphabetized list. And this is how it should look. So the first one, as you can see, is an electronic source. So eco U. That is the last name eco and then the initial just for the first name U. Just a letter. With a full stop and then the year in brackets, full stop. And then comes the name. And then you say that, oh, this was a PDF file that I found. And then after that, you put in the authors of said PDF file and then retrieved from. Where did you get it? And then if you can find it, you put in original work was published in 1977. It's basically how it can look. All right? And then below, in the alphabetical order, eco, the E, comes before the W in Wenyer, or how they would pronounce that, I'm not entirely sure. And then you write it like that. You see that first comes the last name, then the D and T, because this author has multiple names. So, like that. The full stop, the colon, the and sign, and we have the next person who wrote, with the brackets, with the year and everything, and then comes the name of this journal or the art where this comes from. Well, no, I'm completely sorry here. Here comes the name of the article. All right, mood management across affective states. Blah, 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 blah. That's the name of the article. And then in italics, they put the name of the entire journal that this was taken from. So we can see here that it's an article within a journal, and then comes the page numbers. All right, that's basically it. So if you have a hard time understanding it, I completely get that, because it can get quite tricky, and you say like, oh, how am I supposed to do this? How am I supposed to do that? Oh, how does this work? Always feel free to ask, and remember that I have linked to you before, links to the writing lab at Purdue OWL. I'll do the same here with the APA referencing. When you go in there, you get a lot more information than you're getting here, but this is what I think you need to start looking at. Okay, moving on. 2. Something a lot softer. So, this is for your presentations. What do you guys need to do when you're going to present this? Which you will be doing in smaller groups to each other. I need you guys to practice your text thoroughly. Know what you're going to say so you don't have to read from your entire text. Be ready to present. So use flashcards or something similar. Is write notes down. So this is actually taken seriously, so people can take you seriously because they believe that you know what you're actually talking about. Look at your audience, and here I'm saying dare to take a step forward. And that means when you're sitting in your groups or presenting in front of your small groups, if you're standing up, move closer to people. If you're sitting down, lean in. Don't try to hide yourself. Be present in the room where you're presenting. Dare to do that. That makes you seem so much more credible, so much more professional, and people will actually believe you more. And then you're going to have a maximum of 5 minutes to present. And remember this, because I'm saying here that when presenting, you guys will read between 80 and 100 words per minute. Maybe some will read less, some will read more, depending on how confident you are and how nervous you are when you're speaking, and that's completely fine. But test read before you come into the presentations so you know that you manage these 5 minutes. Because if you don't, well, it's going to take time from the others in class, so they don't have the same chance as you to present. So come prepared, and you're going to get as much time as possible in class to be able to do this. Alright, so for the final slide today, we move into what happens next week. And the presentations will be on next Wednesday, so the 16th of October. And why they're not on Monday is because we're having a visit from my supervisor at the university, and she wants to see me teach and not just see you guys, so it's quite important that we do something else. So that gives you more time to finish up. So if you're not finished this week in class, then you have time to finish everything up and prepare accordingly. So, but for next Wednesday, prepare your flashcards, practice, and then your presentations will start on that Wednesday, the 16th of October in week 42. Good luck, guys. I've seen you work so well, and this is not going to be hard at all for you because I've seen what you guys can do. So keep up the good work, and I will see you all soon.